Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Jenny Halpin, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Navy is Commodore Matthew Ritchie. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. The live stream of this ceremony is made possible by the Returned and Services League of Australia and the RSL and Services Clubs Association. We welcome members who are watching the recording of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by visitors to the memorial. Now, if you are able, could I please invite you to stand and join in singing the national anthem. If you require a seat, please be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 103,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Private Ambrose Leslie George Travers. Ambrose Travers was born in 1894 in Mount Pleasant, near Wollongong in New South Wales. Known as Paddy to his friends and family, he was one of 8 children born to Nicholas John Travers, a grazier, and his wife, Jane Elizabeth. Paddy and his family moved to Dubbo when he was an infant and then later settled in Gilgandra. He was working as a farmer when the First World War broke out in 1914. Paddy Travers enlisted in the Australian Imperial Force on the 5th of January 1916. He was assigned to the 18th Reinforcement of the 3rd Battalion with the rank of private. His brother Nicholas enlisted later that month and was assigned to a different battalion. On the 5th of June 1916, Private Paddy Travers embarked for active service, sailing from Sydney on the troop ship Kiara. In August, he reached England and continued training alongside other new recruits, but was hospitalised with mumps until October, when he headed for the Western Front. Travers joined his unit in the support lines around Flers in northern France on the 10th of November 1916, just as a bitterly cold winter began to set in. In early 1917, the enemy began a strategic withdrawal to the fortified Hindenburg Line. Their retreat was eagerly followed by the Allied units, keen to push the enemy back. In advancing on the Germans, these units were confronted by well-prepared rearguard defences and booby-trapped towns, producing a series of bloody clashes with the enemy. Travers' unit was drawn into a number of small-scale engagements before being drawn into the fighting around the village of Bulcourt. This was the Allies' second attack on the village, which had been incorporated into the enemy's new front line. An attack the month before had been absolute carnage. Under heavy machine gun and artillery fire, and without the support of tanks they'd been led to expect, Australian units suffered over 3,000 casualties in one day. On the 3rd of May, Travers and his comrades moved off from their position after a barrage, headed towards the enemy trenches. Just minutes later, the enemy opened their own artillery on the advancing troops, causing many casualties and forcing them back. But the Allied forces eventually took their objectives after more than a week of fighting. This success came at the cost of a further 7,000 casualties. Among the dead was Private Paddy Travers. Following his death, one of his comrades wrote to Travers' parents and said, "I got what information I could concerning Paddy's death. He was wounded very badly in the leg, but in spite of this was trying to scratch the dirt off one of his mates who was buried alongside him. He managed to get enough dirt off him to allow him to breathe. Well, Paddy would have been all right." He was seen smoking a cigarette as the stretcher bearers were carrying him off the line, but the shells were dropping everywhere and he had the misfortune to be hit again and killed. "I never thought it would be my lot to have to tell you this, but it is my duty to him who is gone." Travers was buried near Maricourt Wood in France, but his final resting place was lost during fighting in the region. Today, he is commemorated on the Australian War Memorial at Vils-Bretonneux. Private Paddy Travers was 23 years old. His name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my right, amongst almost 62,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. A photograph of his name listed on the Vils-Bretonneux Memorial is displayed today by the Pool of Reflection. This is but one of many of the stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Private Ambrose Leslie George Travers, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the Ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozieres or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. On behalf of our director, staff and volunteers, thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today and for your continued support during the memorial's development project. We wish you all a very pleasant evening.